everyone. It is meteorologist Joe Martucci here from the press in Atlantic City for the Something in the Air podcast. It was a pretty quiet weather month across the region, but when you're always joined by New Jersey State climatologist Dr. Dave Robinson, there is never a shortage of things to talk about, including our second year in a row of winning the New Jersey Press Association Award for Best Podcast.
Congratulations. That's wonderful.
I think you deserve at least half of it.
Let's split the prize. Have a piece of pizza, right? A slice of pizza.
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
No, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. It's proving as a service, and it's my pleasure to talk with you at the start of every month.
I think I was trying to think about how we first started this. I think I saw you in Atlantic City for the NJ Emergency Preparedness Conference in 2018. And I remember you were there along with Matt Gerbish, who's the assistant state climatologist. And I think we just started talking. Then I just shot an email over to you saying, hey, do you think if you could do this with me? And you graciously said yes. And it has been nonstop since.
I never say no to students. And, you're still a student of mine.
I am learning.
Right?
Yes, that is correct. Well, for the people who don't know, I helped you with research, or however you want to call it, back in 2013. So that was 9 years ago, about dew points and New Jersey. Very interesting for everybody listening here, I'm sure. But it's somewhere in your office, right?
I was going to say, it's on my desktop, on my screen right to the right, a list of several things I want to get to and finish up or update. We need to update it because it tells an interesting story. As New Jersey is warmed, the atmosphere has the potential of holding more moisture. And with that, when a trigger comes along, you can get more excessive rainfall or snowfall. So it tells an important story. The trouble, as I recall, we had there are not a lot of long-term dew point observations, and ones that some of the it's difficult to measure dew point. It's not as simple, and the instruments aren't as reliable necessarily as measuring temperature, for instance.
Yeah, I think we did Atlantic City International Airport, Newark, Trenton, maybe somewhere else. But I do remember with the airport that we saw a little bump in the dew points during the middle of the day in the summer as the sea breeze worked in.
Yeah. I mean, it's the summer moisture. We haven't gotten, I was just looking at some things the other day. High temperatures, the extreme high temperatures during the summers aren't getting hotter, but the summers overall are getting hotter. And that's because it's just more moisture in the air. It's tough to get it cool at night. And we still have these persistent warm periods of daytime high temperatures. So we're looking at a climate that just has a more extensive hot summer and one with the warmer nights, but not necessarily temperatures going through the roof. And that's in part because of that increased moisture that you were studying almost a decade ago, Joe.
Almost. Speaking of a decade ago, though, I was thinking about 2012 because we're coming up. Now, we're recording this on March 1st, climatological spring. We'll talk about that in a sec. But we're coming up on the 60th anniversary of the 1962 Ash Wednesday nor'easter. And I was reading some things that we wrote back in 2012. But before we had the derecho that really pummeled a lot of South Jersey, and then Sandy afterwards. So right. I'm hoping that this year is a lot more quieter as we remember the 60th anniversary.
Let's hope so. I mean, really, you look back to the 60s storm, there wasn't a storm like it really until Sandy. And for LBI South, Sandy paled in comparison to that storm. Yet from LBI-ish north, Sandy was worse.
Yeah. And that's because of where it made landfall. If you're on that westward side of the storm relative to the storm's motion, because the storm was going east to west, made landfall in Brigantine, anything south of there. People were telling me, I got an email from somebody in Avalon, or who was in Avalon, and they said that, they think that the 1962 nor'easter was worse than Sandy. And sometimes I'm like, it's one of those back in my day things. But no, I mean, they're
right.
Serious conversation to be had about that.
No, they're absolutely right. And remember, 62 storm didn't make landfall. It just parked itself off the coast for like 3 days. So it was a very different beast than Sandy. Sandy was a quick hitter over 2 tidal cycles, essentially. And the nor'easter in 62 was just high tide after high tide, and the low tides were exceeding normal high tides by the time you got into the second, third, and fourth tidal cycle. And that's what made it such a devastating storm.
You know, I was talking to Scott Mazzella. You know Scott?
No, I don't.
He's the author of the Great Storms of the Jersey Shore book.
Oh, I've just forgotten his name, though. I'm right behind me. They're on the shelf there. We got a whole shelf. I'm sorry. I just blanked on his name.
No, it's all good. Yeah. He's an LBI guy, but we were talking on the phone last night. And one of the things he said that really makes the 62 storm stand out amongst a host of other things is that the infrastructure in place at the shore during then. He said, Sandy, when it hit, a lot of the people, if they didn't choose to rebuild, it was just because I'm kind of out of here. In the 62 storm, the houses were kind of just hitting into each other like bowling balls, he would say. It was almost like you were a bowling ball and, you hit another house and like pins, it would hit 4 other houses and they would all just go under. They didn't have the infrastructure like we did now. And that also played a role into just all the devastation that was there.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about cottages down there at the time. It might have been a 2-story cottage, but, I vacationed down there in the 60s with my parents. And
I don't believe that.
I know it's hard to believe.
At least the 80s.
But I did. And I don't remember homes on stilts, for instance. But there were just a lot of these beach cottages that I suppose weren't tied too closely to their foundations, and they could easily start sailing off as the island became inundated. And as you said, then you've got bumper cars of houses.
Pretty much. Well, let's hope, as we go into March, so far it looks like a lamb the first half of the month, looking good. Let's talk about February. And like I said at the top, after such an impactful January for us here at the Shore in South Jersey, not really much to talk about this month, huh?
No, I mean, look, we started talking about something 60 years ago because there wasn't a lot to just dive into. Last month, I mean, looking at what March may hold, and it looks like it's going to be on the mild side, at least for the first couple of weeks, and rather docile, you're going to be looking at this as a 1-month winter. Now, let's face it, even the worst of winters generally have 1 or 2 bad months, and the others not so bad. There are exceptions. The 96 winter across New Jersey, every month had above average snowfall. But this year, you're going to be looking back and going mild December, relatively mild February, looking at least at the get-go over the next couple of weeks, a mild start to March. And you're going to say, but it was just what a winter. And you're going to look back and say January.
And I'm glad you're thinking of us in South Jersey when you say that, because I know it's a little different in the northern half of the state.
Well, that's all we have to talk about is South Jersey for snow this winter. I mean, you're talking 30, 35 inches in some of the snowier spots of Southeast Jersey, not Southwest, but Southeast Jersey. Yep. Up in Central Jersey, 12 to 15 inches so far for the winter. And up in the northwest part of the state, 20 inches. Yeah. So unless things get cranking, and there's still a chance up in the hills of northwest Jersey, Atlantic City may be the snowiest spot in Jersey when we put this winter to bed.
Well, I'll tell you what, I actually did this research for a talk I was doing a couple Fridays ago in Summers Point. The snowiest place in the state is Galloway at one of your Cocoa Ross stations, your volunteer network at 36. Second place, also Galloway, another one with, I think, 35.2-ish. You might have the number, but, Galloway's the snow capital of New Jersey so far this winter. But when we look at February here, the airport had 0.1 inches of snow, Atlantic City International Airport, a couple of days with flurries here. I think when you started off the month, it did really still feel like that kind of deep winter. You had snow cover on the ground left over from the or what are we calling this? The blizzard of 2022. Do we have a name for this?
I would. I mean, that storm on the 29th was an impactful storm, but I called the storm back many years ago. We had in January, and it was gone. It fell on a Saturday. It was gone by Thursday. I called it the stealth snowstorm. It was like was it really there? Did we really see it? And that was the kind of the nature of this storm. It was out of here in just a couple of days.
It did go away. I mean, it was on the 28th, 29th, the storm. We had snow depth until looking here until about the 4th, and then we went away. But it seemed to me that when we got to the like Valentine's Day-ish, the earth was really feeling the love and warming us up after we got past Valentine's Day, because we were below average generally until the 16th. And then after that point, we were generally above average. So it sounds like we had about a 6-week period or 7-week period of deep winter starting right after January 1st, New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, when we had that South Jersey special, that Atlantic City Expressway special on the 3rd, and then kind of ended around Valentine's Day. I know temperatures at the airport wound up a little bit above average. Where are we for the remainder of the area?
Yeah, I mean, the airport was 1.1 degree above average, and the marina was 2.2 above. And that's a function of the seesaw nature, as you said, a little on the colder side the first half, little on milder the second. But even the second half, we had the ups and downs. We had a couple of fronts come through that just dropped the temperature 15 to 20 degrees in an hour. So it was the volatility of the systems that came through that was so interesting, although they weren't very potent in terms of the moisture, even rain, let alone snow they produced. But around Atlantic County, Galloway came in with 3.19 inches. Let's just call it precip, but albeit it's almost all rain. But Folsom was on the drier side with 1.75. And that was, down in Cape May, it was dry.
The bubble came back from its winter vacation.
The bubble's back. Middle Township had the most with 2.00 inches, and there wasn't much variation because Lower Township, the lowest we had from some of our observers down there, was 1.71 inches. I should say, we should be a little over 3 inches in February, to just put it in perspective to normal. And then up the coast, Brick had 3.45, but Jackson only 2.37. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't exceptionally dry. As you went north, a little bit moister. But, South Jersey has been drier. Without that snow, would have been even worse shape. But we could use the whole state itself could use some moisture. We've been teetering there on not drought, but the southern counties we still have in abnormally dry conditions on the National Drought Monitor. And they've been joined in February by northwest part of the state, although that was the wettest part of the state in February. So we might back off on that. But the whole state, it's just going to take a couple of dry weeks, and you're going to see the whole state go into an abnormally dry situation. So it's been that teetering, or that little dance that we've had for the last couple of months. And am I worried? No. Am I watchful? Yes, because it will only take a dry March, and particularly one that's warm, when we're getting into the wildfire season, when we're trying to fill up our reservoirs, our surface reservoirs, and our groundwater for the water consumptive season, I like to call it, for irrigation, lawn watering, car washing, and such. I would feel more comfortable going into that season come May and June with a little more abundant rainfall these next 6-8 weeks.
I agree with you there. And you brought up the drought monitor. I was going to talk about that. I'm glad you did. Anywhere basically Atlantic to Camden on south is in this pre-drought stage. Pre-drought stage, I think we could call it, right? Abnormally dry. And then, like you said, the sun's getting higher in the sky. It's pulling out more moisture each day. And that's not good for wildfires either. And we'll talk about that. But I agree with you 100%. We're right there on the edge of trying to be normal. We just need that rain to really come through a little bit here. So let's take a break. On the other side, we'll talk a little bit about wildfires. We'll also talk more about the month of February on the Something in the Air podcast.
Hey everyone, it's meteorologist Joe Martucci again. Every time I do a talk, I say if I could take this job again, I would take it 10 times out of 10. And that's for many reasons. One, weather just matters more down here. I've been in many corners of the state, and when it comes to southeastern New Jersey, Weather is the most important thing I always hear, whether it's for tourism, whether it's for farming, or whether it's for boating. Well, weather just plays a big role. And not only that, here at the Press of Atlantic City, we're able to give this information to you any way you want. You want it in your newspaper? We got it. You want it in videos? We got it. You want it on our website? Yeah, we have that too. And we can't do it without your support. Your support has been great over the past couple of years, and we look forward to more of your support in the future. To support South Jersey journalism, go to our website, pressofac.com/subscribe, and you'll have offers that you can't refuse. That's pressofac.com/subscribe.
And we are back. It is the Something in the Air podcast, award-winning, two-time award-winning Something in the Air podcast, brought to you by the Press of Atlantic City here. I almost fumbled that one there. My head was getting a little big as I was saying that. But I'm joined here with New Jersey State climatologist, Dr. Dave Robinson. We were just talking about how we're kind of teetering on the edge of drought. We're not in drought yet, but we're somewhat there. And what that makes me think of is wildfires as we go into the month. Now, thankfully, in February, we didn't have any wildfires. But a lot of prescribed burning by the Forest Fire Service, which kind of helps manage the forest and clear out some of that dead underbrush and everything. But, you set up a website for the Forest Fire Service to look at conditions. Just kind of talk to me about what you think about wildfire season going into March.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to be careful because even 5 days after an inch of rain falls in the Pinelands, if the humidity drops and the winds pick up and the temperature rises, you can be in a fire danger situation, particularly at this time of the year when you don't have the foliage on the deciduous trees, which can be found in the Pinelands.
Right.
And you have all that debris, the leaves and twigs and whatever that fell last fall and throughout the winter. So you've got the fuel there. And you can dry out so quickly with the sandy soils. And as we get into March, we still have the winds of winter, if you will. Winds tend to calm down in the summer. They're localized in thunderstorms. But you have the winds, which increases evaporation. You have the warming air, which increases evaporation. And you can get into trouble really quickly. So what we've done in cooperation with the U.S. Forest Service, and I know the New Jersey Forest Service uses it too, a really simple tool, if you will, for them to look at and evaluate weather conditions on the spot. Every 5 minutes, we update this page. And the neat thing about it is, in a sense, it's a simplicity and its cooperative nature. We know the data, but we don't know the fire danger, the critical threshold. So we went to these folks and said, when do you want to be given a watch and then a warning and then a real big heads up on wind, on humidity, on how little rainfall, on the temperature? And they set thresholds. And so what this page they look at does, it's color coded. They don't even have to look at the numbers. They can just look at the page and see, oh, there's a lot of yellow there. Yep. It's a windy day. It's a dry day. We better not do a prescribed burn. Or it's a windy day, a dry day. We haven't had a lot of precip in a while and it's showing red. We better have all our equipment and staff ready because we're in a real danger period for wildfires breaking out. So it's proved to be a very useful tool. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback from the firefighting community. And that's just great because that's what our network is there for, is to help people make decisions, help people evaluate current and ongoing situations. And again, it doesn't have to be super sophisticated, but it has to have the right information. And it has to be put in a package, if you will, that is useful to the community, not to the research guys up in our towers, but the people out in the fire towers and down on the ground, looking for, preparing for, and ultimately when a fire breaks out, this will even tell them when there's a wind switch, a directional wind switch, or when the winds might be calming down, for instance. So we love working with folks on that. We're developing something now, an app for the dam safety group at the Department of Environmental Protection, which will send them warnings when certain excessive precipitation thresholds have been reached. 1 hour precipitation, 3 hours, 6 hours, going over thresholds that they're designating. It will send them a warning that there's potential in that particular stream basin, that there could be flooding to the magnitude it could threaten dams that sit on the streams within that particular river basin.
Mm-hmm. Just going back, let's go back to temperatures just for the month of February, because that was the other thing we were talking about in between the break here. While it was a fairly quiet month, our temperatures were really on a seesaw here. And if you like spring, and you were at the shore, we actually did pretty good in February here. We had a couple of days that we got into the 60s at the shore, and that was on February 12th. We got up into the low to mid 60s, and then on the 23rd, we were well into the 60s for most places. In fact, at the Atlantic City Marina, and records go back to 1874, we broke a daily record by 7 degrees. The record was 62. We got up to 69 degrees. So, it was a pretty, when we got warm, we got pretty warm.
Yeah, and you were talking about that, and you have to forecast this. The direction of the winds so important. You're not going to have that happen if the winds are blown off the ocean, or if there isn't enough of a stiff westerly breeze to keep the cool air from coming onshore along the coast. Yeah,
it's tough. I'll admit I went under forecast on the 23rd. I wasn't expecting 69 at the shore. I put 62, which would have tied the record. But you know what it is? It's just so tough when the ocean's so cold right now. It's so tough to say the wind is really going to overpower it. It's hard. It's hard.
And you're forecasting. You're micro forecasting, because you're talking about 5 miles to the west. It's a lot easier.
Sure.
But there was also a case a week ago where there was a sea breeze, but it was aided by what we call the synoptic flow.
Yep.
And up here in Central Jersey, I was out on my bike and it was in the upper 60s, and I looked, and I'm just a few miles west of New Brunswick. It was in the 50s there. There was just that cool air coming up the Raritan Valley, and it was being nudged in by easterly winds.
Yeah.
And sure enough, as I'm riding down a little hill in the community, the wind was in my face, coming.
You were right on the board.
Towards the east. So I was doing weather evaluations while trying to get a little 5 p.m. exercise.
You're always working, aren't you?
I've been told that.
Yeah. But that's why you are who you are. So it's all good. But sometimes you do get that sea breeze. Most of the time, you get the sea breezes that come through. And we are, March, April, May. I tell people at the shore, I said, this isn't our season. Spring is not the shore season. The fall is the shore season, but not the spring, because a lot of times we get these sea breezes, and, I used to live in Galloway, and it would be like 49 in Galloway, and be like 64 in Hamilton. And then you get to May and it's like 55 in Galloway, and it's like 80 in Hamilton. You're like, oh my God, I just got to start making my way further west.
Patience is a virtue. And along the coast, I love to say, if you like forsythia, for instance, you can see forsythia for about a 6-8 week period in New Jersey by starting in the southwest, heading central, northeast. Then you head up into the highlands, and then you finish it up by heading down towards the shore.
Shore's last.
Your forsythia tour, we should call it.
Are you a forsythia guy?
I've had them in my yard, but I don't go looking for them.
Okay. All right. Just wondering. Elsewise for the month of February, it was windy on a few days. There was a 2-day stretch. Was it what were we saying? The 18th, 19th that were both windy, like kind of in back-to-back days?
It was the 7th. It was the 18th and 19th. And wow, the winds really did howl. I mean, we had a day where a number of our stations went over 50 miles an hour, and up at High Point on the 18th, gust of 66 miles an hour. And that was with some colder air coming in to replace some milder air. The pressure was exceedingly high. around the 15th when we had that real cold weather. It was
we
highest of the
got below
winter.
freezing. Yeah.
Highest of winter, 30.7 on your barometers in inches if you tap it. And then 2 days later, we had the lowest pressure of the month, or 3 days. On the 18th, it went down to about 29.3, 29.4. So you lost an inch of mercury in a 24-hour period there. And that's, as you the meteorologist knows, that's a recipe for winds.
Yeah, that's a huge recipe for wind. And, I started getting headaches around that time too. Yeah.
There are people, it's not a wives' tale. There are people who are sensitive to pressure changes. Most people are, but there's certain people that have certain sinus conditions, or I suppose migraines and such, that can be triggered by these pressure differentials. And it's not necessarily the pressure itself, it's the speed of the change. It's the magnitude of the change that can be the big problem.
Well, hopefully we stay quiet as we go into March. March is a lamb all the way through. Dr. Robinson, where can we get all of your weather and climate info?
For the weather, go to njweather.org. And for the climate background information from the State Climate Office, njclimate.org.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Robinson, thank you.
One other thing. We got to add one thing.
Wait, there's more.
It's March 1st. It's the first day of March Madness. And no, we're not talking basketball, and our fingers are crossed for our state university. But this is the major recruiting month for the CocoRoz program nationwide, where we try to sign up a lot of new volunteers. So if you're interested in measuring rain and snow, go to cocoroz.org, COCORAHS.org.
Yeah. And I'm going to try to link up with you probably at the end of the month, and we'll try to do something with that. So go to our website. We'll talk more about it, how it helps people. Actually, the past couple of times we've done a couple pieces on it. We've had a good number of people sign up in Ocean, Atlantic, Cape. So we'll hope for more.
You've been immeasurably helpful, and we do have a wonderful group of volunteers there now. If only you could extend it over to Salem County. We're really short over at Salem.
We'll try. We're still looking for some Cumberland, too. We're still looking to fill in some Cumberland. Yeah. So if you're in Cumberland, you're listening, CocoRoz, it's almost free, $30, $40 at the top.
It's a cheap hobby.
Cheap hobby. There you go. That's it.
Cheap hobby.
All right. Well, actually, for having nothing to say, we're actually out of time here at this point. So we're going to wrap up. We will be back with you third Wednesday of the month. I'm very close to nailing down our guest, and it could be guest with a S at the end. We will see. But you'll hear from us as we go into that. So, all right, everybody, take care. We'll talk to you guys soon. This is Something Weird podcast.